basketball player, and a woman. What does it take to become a household name?
Sabrina Ionescu,
Sabrina does this as well as anybody in the country.
Oh, you know, just being the best player in the world. Yeah, we said it. You know how the sequel is always trying to outdo the original? Well, the same goes for the Republican walkout in Salem. And her voice fills the airwaves.
I think that is so cool.
But her family story is woven into American history.
Here's my grandmother. There's Thurgood Marshall.
Her grandmother's role in one of the most important Supreme Court decisions ever. Here's the story. Thanks for being with us. Hi. I'm Dan Haggerty. Welcome to The Story. This is the show where we make you part of the story. We want you to be a part of this. It's really easy. We want you to talk to us. Pick up your phone right now. Send us an email. Send us a message on Facebook. Use Instagram. Get on Twitter and use the hashtag HeyDan. We're looking for your questions and your comments. We talk about them throughout the show. We need them, right? Now, look, if you are a movie director, for instance, you want to make the sequel even bigger and even better than the original, right? So right now, we're watching the sequel to last year's Republican walkout over cap and trade play out. The Senate Republicans, they're gone once again, and this year it is bigger and it is bolder. So this is what happened in the Senate this morning.
We don't have a quorum. We cannot do what we came here to do.
Okay, same as yesterday. None of the Senate Republicans showed up. So then the House tried to meet, and this happened.
Not excused: Wilson, Bossart, Davis, Drazen, Moorgreen, Zika, Lewis, Springer, Wallen, Reschke, Brees Iverson, Barretto, Owens, Post, Neerman, Noble, Hayden, Brock Smith, Stark, Greg Smith, and Bonham.
This time the House Republicans are gone too, and I guess they're not excused, just like when you miss school without a note from your parents. So we've got empty desks inside where they can't get anything done. But outside, there is a lot going on. We got protesters supporting Republicans and protesters demanding that they come back. We've even got dueling horns. Okay. Hey, back here at KGW, we're getting a lot of your questions, things that you guys are writing us in on social media, asking really how are Republicans even allowed to do this? And we're actually looking into the legality of all that because it is really, really complicated stuff. But what we can say is this has happened before. Last year, of course, we saw 2 Republican walkouts. Before that, we have to go back to 2007 when Republicans walked out over a tax deal. In 2001, Democrats, they were the ones who left over redistricting. In fact, Governor Kate Brown was the Senate Democratic leader at the time and was part of that walkout. Democrats also walked out way back in 1971. So the point is, walkouts, they're not, all that common, but we are starting to see them more and more. All right, let's get to our big story tonight, because if you call yourself a college basketball fan or even a sports fan, really, and you aren't paying attention to everything that's happening right now in Eugene, well, I think your fan credentials are a bit in question. The University of Oregon might just have the single best college basketball player to ever play the game. And after last night's performance against Stanford, she may have cemented her name on that list.
Now, keep in mind that Sabrina Ionescu has never missed a shoot-around. Sabrina
Ionescu back to Sabali, and Ionescu to Moore into the hands of Ionescu as Ionescu gets the pick and the score.
And Sabrina does this as well as anybody in the country.
Ionescu sets up Sabali. To Ionescu, Sabrina Ionescu. Here is Ionescu. Ionescu in the middle. Here's Ionescu for 3. Tipped alive, Ionescu's there. And there is Sabrina Ionescu with the rebound. She has just become the first player in Division I history with 2,000 points, 1,000 assists, and 1,000 rebounds. A historic mark set by Sabrina Ionescu.
Say it with me now, Sabrina Ionescu. I mean, come on, all those highlights, that was just last night. Never mind, she had the flu. Never mind, she hadn't eaten all day. She still led the team to a win over Stanford. And as you heard, she shattered a record that nobody in Division I basketball ever, male, female, nothing has ever done. No one's ever done this before. 2,000 points, 1,000 assists, and 1,000 rebounds. Don't even get me started on her 26 career triple-doubles. To give you an idea of how insane that number is, the next highest amount of college triple-doubles is 12 by Kyle Collinsworth, who played for BYU. The next three highest are all women. All right, basketball people, bear with us for just 1 second. I got to talk to our non-basketball people here so they understand just how ridiculously hard it is to get a triple-double, especially at a high level like that. You need to get double digits in 3 of the following basketball categories. So points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. So 10 points, 10 assists, 10 steals, something like that. That would be a triple-double. You want to know how hard it is to do that? Damian Lillard just got his first ever a month ago. Basically what I'm saying is Sabrina Ionescu is a force to be reckoned with, and she managed to pull off last night's performance not only sick, but on one of the most emotional moments in basketball history.
To do it on 2/24/20 is huge. We had talked about it in the preseason. I can't really put that into words, and he's looking down and really proud of me, and just really happy for this moment with my team.
All right, there she's talking about Kobe Bryant, 24, on top of being the date last night. That was the jersey that he wore for years. And we talked about this last night on the story. Before that game against Stanford, Sabrina Ionescu spoke at the memorial for Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gigi at the Staples Center in LA. But, you know, I don't think we did a good enough job of explaining how huge that was and just what it meant. She stood up alongside some of the most powerful names in basketball and pop culture. Shaquille O'Neal, that man, Michael Jordan, they both spoke. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver spoke. Jimmy Kimmel spoke. Kobe's wife Vanessa, Beyonce performed. Alicia Keys and Christina Aguilera, they performed as well. And amid all of that, Sabrina Ionescu.
It's so strange to describe him or Gigi in the past tense. You don't get used to that. No one tells you that about grief. The week after the accident, I was in Colorado. I had a game, and like I do before every game, I prayed. This time I was thinking about Kobe and Gigi. His voice is still in my head, even if his body is not on this earth. And all I wanted was a sign that in some way he still heard me too. I looked off into the sky, and there it was, a beautiful golden sunset, the boldest yellow, Lakers yellow, and further in the distance, a helicopter. There was my sign that he will forever be with me.
She says that she still texts Kobe's number. After he retired from the NBA, Kobe focused on building up women's basketball. Listen, I don't think I'm being controversial when I say that women's basketball doesn't get the same amount of attention that men's does. But Sabrina Ionescu seems to be single-handedly changing that, demanding our attention. So how did she get here? I mean, let's go back to the beginning. Sabrina Ionescu, daughter of Romanian immigrants, born in Walnut Creek, California, December 6th, 1997. Yeah, 97. You feel old yet? She started strong, left high school with a win-loss record of 119-9 and a scoring record of, wait for it, 2,606 points. She also held school records in assists, steals, and triple-doubles. We didn't know yet, but I think we were getting a little tease of what was to come. She came to Oregon in 2016 to play for the Ducks. She immediately scored 4 triple-doubles and was named the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, only the second Duck to receive that honor. By sophomore year, she had the NCAA women's triple-double record, and by junior year, she had the all-time record number of triple-doubles. She ended that year by sharing the John R. Wooden Award with Duke's Zion Williamson, who would later become the #1 pick in the NBA draft. Now it's her senior year, and the world is waiting to see what comes next. And that's how she got here. So you know she can play basketball, right? There's no question about that. But you might not know she's also a great student. She's in a master's program at U of O right now, learning how to build her own brand and market herself. So today we got in touch with her professor. We talked to her. She told us that Ionescu came into the program knowing that having a brand was important for her career. She says that she first didn't really know what she wanted that to look like, though. But now she has found her voice and is using it.
The thing that now people are learning about her is how much she truly cares about the role of women in sports and the importance she sees that women are equal in sports to men. And she's promoting that platform when she talks on social media, when she speaks in front of groups, and that is coming from her heart.
A big part of equality in the sports world is the pay disparity between men and women. WNBA players did just get a higher salary. The average is now $130,000, and the highest paid players make more than $500,000, which is a ton of money. It is. But let's look at the NBA. The average salary for men, nearly $8 million. And right now, the highest paid player in the world makes more than $40 million. That is a ton of money. Now, it's true that the NBA gets a lot more viewership and attendance, so more than the WNBA. That factors into how much the players are getting paid, of course. But Ionescu's star power does bring in crowds. It's been proven. You can see it in the numbers. The year that before she played at U of O, the average attendance for women's home games was about 1,600, and it has gone up every single season since. This season, it hit more than 10,000. That is a 10-fold increase. By the way, the WNBA draft is happening in April, and even though she's probably going to go number one, no question, we also know Ionescu plans to finish her master's program in the spring. Moving on from basketball now, the saga of Salem's homeless crisis continues, as does the city council's desire to talking about it. During last night's meeting, the councilors and the mayor, they were discussing a sit-lie ordinance, basically preventing people from sitting or lying on sidewalks from 7 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. Now remember, they've already banned people from tent camping on sidewalks, so that would be an additional restriction for homeless people. 2 weeks ago, Salem leaders voted to talk more about the ordinance today, and today they agreed to keep talking about it another day. City Council will draft a new proposal to discuss sit-lie at the next council meeting. That's on March 9th. And the new proposal will include some provisions for the homeless, including a place for them to go during the day, either inside or outside, bathrooms as well, and a plan to build permanent restrooms in downtown Salem. Something else you should know about is the Metro Council finally approved that homeless service tax we've been talking about. So you'll be seeing that now on the May ballot right here in the metro area. So they had some math troubles the first time around, but hopefully they got everything squared away. Here are the details at this point. So if you vote in May to approve this new Metro tax, this is what will happen. There will be a 1% marginal tax on people who make $125,000 a year or households that make $200,000 a year. Now, marginal means only the income over 125 or over 200,000. That's the percent that is taxed. That's where that 1% will come from. There would also be a 1% tax on the profits of businesses that generate more than $5 million in revenue. Metro hopes to raise $250 million a year for homeless wraparound services. All right, funny story right now. Remember how Washington's Department of Health was very open and very honest about how many people they were monitoring for coronavirus in their state. But then the Oregon Health Association refused to tell us how many people that they were monitoring because of privacy or something like that. Well, either OHA changed their policy overnight or they no longer care about your privacy because they changed their mind and they gave us the numbers. OHA is monitoring 76 people in Oregon. We know that. Washington keeping an eye on 746 people. Nationwide, we know about 53 cases of people with the virus confirmed. A person being monitored is a person who does not have symptoms. Keep that in mind, but have been exposed potentially to coronavirus, which we are now calling COVID-19. Hopefully, if I backslide and call it coronavirus, you'll still know what I'm talking about. And listen, I'm not a doctor here, not by a long shot. I don't want to get people all worked up about coronavirus for no reason, but I also don't want to say that everything's going to be fine when the CDC is saying things like it's not a matter of if coronavirus spreads in the U.S., but when. They did say that, by the way. Keep in mind, they've experienced diseases and scares like this before. We have in America between SARS and Ebola and Zika virus. So let's keep this latest scare in the appropriate context. As we continue to learn more, we'll continue to report it responsibly. If you have questions for us, reach out using the hashtag HeyDan, and we'll work on getting you some answers. Republican or Democrat, why all Washington voters will have to choose publicly if they want to vote in the primary.
This is a completely different election.
And to Portland, she's a voice on the radio. But to America, her family changed the course of history. When the story continues. Listen, I get it. It's really tough to talk about politics nowadays. People get very defensive. People start fighting. It's just a super divisive time. So I understand if you don't want to be public about your party affiliation. Problem is, if you want to vote in the Washington primaries, You kind of have to. A lot of people wrote us in using the hashtag #HeyDan asking about this. And yeah, turns out state law in Washington now requires that you declare your party affiliation in order to vote in the primary on March 10th. Ballots just got mailed out in Washington, so we've been hearing from a lot of you people in Clark County and beyond wondering why the heck that's anybody's business. Our partners up in Seattle, they talked to the elections director in King County, and she explained why they think it's so important to keep your vote separate from your party affiliation and why they think it's a big deal. Listen here.
Why does it have to be on the outside of the envelope? Why not on the inside?
Right. It's really important in Washington state law and vote by mail that we keep your voter identity away from your ballot. And so in order to keep those separated, we're putting it on the outside of the return envelope.
All right, so there you have it. And if you fancy yourself an independent, that's not going to fly either. Primary elections are specific to political parties. So in Washington, at least, you need to declare a party affiliation before turning in a ballot, or else it won't count. Even if it even has some major political figures upset. Washington's Secretary of State Kim Wyman says she won't vote in this year's primary if she has to declare a party. Wyman is a well-known Republican in a blue state, but she's been careful not to endorse President Trump or any other candidate really for that matter. She told the Seattle Times she's considering sending it back unmarked to make a point. And that leads us to our quote of the day by Kim Wyman, who told the Times, quote, "It's a protest vote at this point." Washington's primary is March 10th, but you can vote early if you'd like. The November election is not party specific, so keep that in mind. Don't worry, you can vote without declaring in that one. All right, let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Matt Safino hanging out with us in the studio tonight. We're talking carbon emissions?
Yep,
CO2?
climate change and CO2 levels, which do nothing but go up and up and up and keep crossing new thresholds. Back in 2013, we hit 400 parts per million. Now, to give you a reference for that, the old baseline was 290 parts per million. The last time the Earth was at 400 parts per million, there were giant camels roaming the Arctic, and there was hardly any ice up there, too. This is a NASA website, climate.nasa.gov, and it keeps track of the climate features here. And I'm going to click on this for you, and you'll see what it's doing, what the carbon dioxide levels are doing. It should bring up a graph here. We'll do that if we can make it do it. Come on. Click for me. Anyway, it's at 413 parts per million right now, and it's expected to go to 417 parts per million, which we have not seen in somewhere between 5.3 and 3.2 million years. So here is that carbon dioxide graph. It continues to go up. There are variations because there is a seasonal change. The carbon tends to peak in the spring, and then during the spring and summer when foliage blooms and goes off, it actually reduces the carbon a little bit. So that's the way that the Earth kind of breathes and regulates the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But the trend is clear, up, 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 and up. This is measured by NOAA and by the folks at on Mauna Loa down in Hawaii, where they've got the observatory there. So that's what's going on with carbon dioxide. And that's important because we crossed 413 parts per million back in, as I said, a few years ago. We've never been that high in human history with our carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere. So it means a lot to our planet. The global temperature, of course, keeps going up as well. We're going to load that vital sign. These are all vital signs here. There's the global temperature. That continues to increase. We told you last month that it was a record warm January on the planet, and that something like 44 of the last Januaries in a row have all been above average. So that's what's going on with the carbon levels. They just keep on going up like that. I want to show you some specifics on this now, too, as this keeps climbing. 417 parts per million is where scientists believe we are headed this year. That's 100 parts per million higher than it was in 1958. So we've done, in the last 62 years, what took nature 10,000 years to do for it to happen naturally. That was from the coldest part of the last ice age to the end of the last ice age. So it helped to end the last ice age with that warming. But again, what we're doing is incredible. The last time the atmosphere was at 417 parts per million of CO2, the sea level was 65 feet higher than it is right now, and the Earth was 7 degrees warmer, and in fact probably much warmer in the Arctic regions. There's virtually no polar ice caps, no Greenland ice sheet, maybe some ice down in Antarctica, but again, a much, much different climate as our CO2 content in the atmosphere continues to climb, Dan.
All right, Matt. Matt Safino, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Hey, we want to get back to election season just for a second. We want to talk about campaign finance. Now, there's a big new donor in Oregon that you've probably never heard of. You may not even have heard of his name. David Gore is the guy, and he just gave $100,000 to a Tea Party PAC. Remember the Tea Party? They were a pretty active conservative movement when President Obama was in office. You might not have heard of them in quite a while, but obviously they are still raising money. So to put Gore's donation into perspective here, the only other Oregonian who's given that much in the last few years is Phil Knight. He gave about $300,000 to a PAC supporting former House Speaker Paul Ryan in 2016 and 2017. He also gave $100,000 to a Republican PAC in 2018. So who is this David Gore guy? Well, he lives in Corvallis. We know that. His parents founded the company that makes Gore-Tex, which makes sense, right? Because of the name Gore. He also founded Ashbrook Independent School in Corvallis and the Cascade Policy Institute, which is a libertarian think tank. He's given to other conservative funds in the past, but this is by far his biggest donation.
When the story continues.
You may not be able to see the whole staircase, but take the first step.
You might have heard her voice in the car, but you probably don't know the role her family played in one of the most pivotal moments in American history.
February is Black History Month, of course, and Black history is all around us, even in our airwaves. A local radio DJ recently told our Christine Pitawanich her family story, and it's a story that completely changed the course of American history for the better.
We are Chris and Crystal, mornings here on The Fish.
Every day, this is Crystal Thornton's office.
Would be awesome.
Oh, man.
Her voice broadcast over the airwaves on this Christian radio station.
Family friendly.
But behind the voice is a family story.
I think that is so cool.
That changed the course of history in the United States.
My grandmother, Maud Esther Lawton, was one of the original 13 plaintiffs from Topeka, Kansas.
She's talking about Brown v. Board of Education, a landmark case that ruled segregation in public schools was unconstitutional.
This basically is pretty much everything that you would want to know about Brown versus the Topeka Board of Education. Here's my grandmother, Maud Lawton. There's Thurgood Marshall.
It can be hard to imagine attending a segregated school, but it was only in 1954, almost 66 years ago, that the Supreme Court made the decision that would become a key component of the civil rights movement.
It's made it possible for not just black students and white students to go to school together, but Asian, Indian, whatever color, whatever race.
For Thornton, it's also meant more opportunities that she might not have had were it not for her grandmother and the 12 other plaintiffs who stood up for what was right.
And I was the first in my family to graduate from college.
And there were firsts in high school, too.
I was the first captain of the cheerleading squad that was African American. I was the first homecoming queen.
Thornton says education has always been her key to success.
You do yourself a disservice not to take advantage of the education that's presented to you.
Now, more than 60 years after Brown v. Board of Education, the opportunities are there. Thornton says you just got to go for it.
You may not be able to see the whole staircase, but take the first step.
In Portland, Christine Pitawanich, KGW News.
Hey, a lot of you are writing in, talking to us using the hashtag #HeyDan. Keep that coming. A lot of questions about last year's cap and trade walkout and then the sequel you're seeing this year. Keep those comments coming. Pick up your phone. Use the hashtag #HeyDan. We read all of them. We're going to read a few of them after the break when we finish the story. We'll see you then. All right, as we say goodbye tonight, as usual, let's get to some of the comments. People writing in using hashtag #HeyDan. This is from Karen. I like the new 6 o'clock segment because you take the time to cover a story, fill in the blanks. We spent a lot of time on Sabrina Ionescu and how amazing she is. We got another tweet from Kimberly saying, how about we draft Ionescu into the NBA? I think the Blazers could use her. That would be awesome. I feel like she would be in the starting five in no time. Hey, let's read this one from Robbie. Why are legislators so afraid of letting voters have a final say on cap and trade? We have touched on that question before. I want you to get onto our YouTube channel right now. You can find answers to that one. We have a really in-depth cap and trade section on there. And of course, that's a question we love answering, so keep those one coming. Then we have Jen saying, hey Dan, can you fact check something about the GOP walkout last year? Was the Student Success Act delayed due to the walkout? That's a good question. One of the things we're really paying a lot of attention to are the other important bills that fall to the wayside when a lot of attention and a lot of efforts get put into one thing, like cap and trade, like we saw during the last session and now this short session. We are on top of it. Trust us. Stay with us right here on The Story and keep those questions coming.